All right, folks, we are back. This is your host, Rusty, and you are listening to Storytime. And today, my guest is author Kat Harmon. And Kat, it says in your biography that you are part of the Lion people. Now, if this won't be revealing too much from your book, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. The book is going to go into obviously a lot more detail. Um, the lion people are an intercosmic race of beings that, well, they transcend time and they transcend physical dimension, I guess is the easiest way to put it without getting really detailed. If you're familiar with the concept of star seeds or star children, indigo children, any of those terms, they all refer to the same kind of thing. A lot of people will make references to master races. You might hear comments about dolphin people, or if you get into something a little bit where people are a little bit more frightened, you can get into concepts of the reptilians, things like that. It's all kind of interrelated. The lion people are a similar idea. They are a race of feline beings that were highly intelligent and highly creative. They also were very interested in how the universe works, just I think as anybody is, but to the point where the concept of time and space and physical being were of utmost importance to them. And they strive to keep avenues of communication with themselves and other races and other beings open. They thrived on the idea that everyone in the universe is a community and that we all can learn from one another and really work together, and that we're all related under the spirit, I guess, not under the skin. So the lion people, it's become a really big part of not only my spirituality, but who I am as a person. And it's something that I've been aware of my entire life, but I wasn't quite able to put it into words. I wasn't quite able to find the label for it until I met a couple key people and read a couple pieces of literature that really pointed me in the right direction and gave me clear focus onto not only my own past, but my own spirit. So that's probably the short version. Like I said, my book will go into a lot more detail, but that's where my title, The Felinist, comes from. A lot of people are aware of who the lion people are. There are some individuals out there that claim to be able to speak with the lion people or channel the lion people. The difference for me is that I am, was, and will be one of the lion people. And I say that because of the fact that their concept of time is not linear. It is circular, just like our animal friends. So that's the easiest way to put that in terms that make the most sense.
Oh, and it sounds like it's something to be proud of. I mean, don't we all wish everyone could think the way you described that they think about everything? I think I think life on Earth would be much more easier.
Yeah, I would agree.
Now, what is, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced this, but in your list of services, you offer a psychometry session. What is psychometry?
Psychometry. Well, what psychometry is the ability to read energies, and by that, immediately people will think of auras and things like that. That's kind of the right idea. The best way to describe it would be like when you take a rock and you toss it into a pond, you can see that it makes ripples. And if there was some way that that rock was invisible and you could look at the ripples and tell what the rock looked like by studying those ripples, it's kind of, if you could translate that into the non-physical, all of our beings, every entity that is alive and has energy, has an effect on the universe around us. We cause these little energy ripples. And psychometry is the ability to read those ripples, for lack of a better term, and interpret what those beings have been through, what their effect on the universe was, what the effect of the universe was on them. If you've ever seen a movie where there's a psychic and they pick up an old piece of jewelry or a photo of someone who's passed and they touch it and immediately they say, oh, this was, Caroline Smith, and she lived in a little white house in Georgia, and she had 3 cats, and she had a horrible, family life. That is psychometry. That particular branch of psychometry is based on touch, but for psychometry to work, you don't necessarily have to be able to touch the object or the person in order to read them, and that's what I do. I concentrate on the person or the thing being read, and I read the energy coming off of them to give them information about not only themselves, but what they've been through, what their future may hold for them, things like that. So that's part of how I do my psychic readings, but I get a lot of people who will ask for readings on objects, especially objects that belong to people that they really cared about. We leave imprints on those objects all the time, especially from very traumatic events or events that were extremely important. And I think sometimes that is a really wonderful validation for people that not only that person had an effect on the universe around them, but that they left an imprint that can be shared.
So just to see if I'm understanding you right, if I were to say bring you in one of the medals that belonged to my grandfather, you could get like an impression off of that medal of or a flash of his life just from one of those medals?
If it was something that he had with him or something that he touched or something that he loved, something that was close to him, yes, absolutely. That's exactly how it would work.
All right. Well, that sounds fascinating. I think you could make a whole book just out of that right there, even. And I know
Well, that may have to be a future project.
I know I'd like to read it, that's for sure, because it sounds very fascinating. All right. And let's see. I've made myself a list of questions here, which I'm just going off of. You also mentioned on your biography page about seeing messages everywhere. What what types of messages? Are they like
Well,
messages from angels or spirits or what?
well, I think some of that comes from my psychometry abilities, being able to see those energy patterns. I think some of it stems directly from that. Um, Also, a little bit of that is empathy. Um, I can walk into a room and I can immediately tell you that this or that person has just had um, some money issues, or this person, just found out they're pregnant, or, this other person is struggling with a bad relationship and they're not really sure which way to go. People resonate those events on their person, and it's immediately obvious to me that that's what's going on. And not only with people, but you can see that sometimes on places and on other living things that we've come in contact with, not only animals, but trees and plants and things like that as well. So it seems like everything around us has something to say. And that's kind of what I mean by that is, when everything is telling some kind of message. And of course, we have those spirits that are around us and those beings that are around us that also have a lot to say. And then they do the same thing, except that they're not physically visible.
Right, those little, well, my grandmother would call it a gut instinct, those little nagging feelings you get. Those I, those I think are sometimes messages from a higher power just trying to push you in the right direction. But the whole free will thing, you can choose to follow that little nagging feeling or not. Just like you could
Exactly.
choose to follow the signs given or not to. And if you don't mind, we do have a question from someone who is listening. In the chat room, Pirate of Cigars has asked, how long can another person's energy affect you?
That's a really good question. Um, I'm assuming you mean it as me as a reader. And this is a common problem that empaths will come across. I find this in the field a lot. Psychics that work off of energy reading, especially when you have a really strong person or a really strong event that you come in contact with, if I didn't know how to cleanse my own spirit and to move those energies on, it could affect me for days, even weeks. So that is something that I've had to learn throughout my life, is how to not be a sponge. And I think that, like I said, that's a problem I think that empaths will have. It's really easy for them to read and absorb that stuff, but it's not so easy for them to kind of shake it off. And so you come into contact with these people who've had these horrible traumas, and you're brought to tears, and you feel their pain, but you have to be able to let it go and remember that that's not your pain. That's something that you're sharing with that person. And it's wonderful to have that intimate connection with them, but you have to be able to let it go and say, that's not what's going on with me. And, cleanse that out of your system and go on and be able to live a normal life. Because otherwise, I work in a hospital where I'm surrounded by people who are going through stressful situations. And if I was not able to kind of wash that out, I would be constantly stressed and upset and just bogged down with negative energy. And it would be a really difficult thing. So that's a really good question.
And for anyone listening who is psychic or empathic, do you have any suggestions of how they could, like, release these energies from clinging to them?
Absolutely. There's a couple really easy techniques. Anybody that's familiar with the concept of grounding and centering, where you either connect with the energy of the earth, or you visualize a light passing, from you through the ground. That is one good way. Just imagine yourself separate and run that circuit of that energy from you to the ground or from you to the sky, whatever your connecting point is. For everybody, it's a little bit different. Sometimes that works. Another way is to almost imagine you're in an invisible shower, and there's this invisible water running all over you, and as it runs off of your body, it's pulling all that negative energy off. And just imagine that and really visualize it and imagine what that would feel like. And sometimes if when you're first starting out, actually just coming home and taking a physical shower for real and then just imagining that as you're in the shower helps to kind of connect with that visualization. I find that that's really effective for someone who's just learning how to do that. It's a really easy visualization, and it tends to be really effective.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And folks, I'm going to take another brief break, and when we come back, we'll have more with my guest, author Kat Harmon. Stay tuned.